What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
Hey, everybody, look alive. It is time. It is almost 1 o'clock Eastern time, and that means it's almost time for what, guys?
Every other Wednesday.
Oh, that was good. Man, you did that
Hey,
hundreds of
with
miles apart.
enthusiasm.
Yeah, but
You
you
may
did
not
it in
remember
chorus.
me, guys. I just want
Yeah,
to
does
say,
everyone remember Jeff Tobe? Jeff Tobe, he is the prodigal. He's back.
he is back.
But his most recent absence was for a very good reason. He's going to share that with us a little bit later. But it's great to see everybody.
Good to see you guys. All but
Dan
one.
says, has he ever been on here before? It's been a while.
Thanks,
Though,
Dan.
Dan.
Nice to meet you, Dan.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. Come on in. We have a fascinating topic today. I mean, I think we always have fascinating topics, but
Fascinating.
fascinating topics. Yeah. So, Sanjay, you want to tell everybody what they need to do on chat?
I will absolutely tell them what they need to do on chat. If you're just joining us for the first time, sometimes Zoom tends to default when you type something in the chat box. It tends to default only to panelists and the host. So if you just click the drop-down menu and hit everyone, we want to share and learn from everyone's wisdom. So make sure everyone can see your smartassery and we can revel in it.
Wait, without Mike, what are we going to do? What day is it?
Well, see, I'm gonna try to do that. It's not easy for me to take that role, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna do my best. So I'm just gonna start with what today is.
But Richard, if you do it well, we can just get rid of Mike altogether.
Okay, there you go.
All right, no pressure. Go ahead.
But if I don't, you'll get rid of me.
Yeah.
Hey, Jenny. Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good whatever. Hush yourself, Sanjay. So, welcome everyone to Every Other Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. What did it do? Oh, come on.
What is that? A graph to show us what day it is?
So we can't get rid of Mike
Today
yet.
is Wednesday, June 11th, 2025.
Yay.
We are here for Every Other Wednesday. Now, today is also, I'm going to tell you several things that today is, but I'm going to start with one because it relates to our opening question. Today is National Corn on the Cob Day. And so our question is, tell us how you best enjoy corn on the cob.
Okay,
guys. Jeff's got one first.
Hold on. Okay, so I just happen to have one right here. And I want to just teach everybody something. You know, people who think they don't learn from our program. First of all, when you're checking, I'm a farmer. I grew up on a farm. When you're checking on corn, always open it, the top, and make sure that all the kernels go to the top. Otherwise, get rid of it. It's not a good one. Cooking the corn. Okay. I have a hint for everybody. Cook it in the, whatever this is.
The husk.
In the husk.
Yeah.
And for 3 minutes for one piece, 4 minutes for two pieces in the microwave. And then cut it here, not the fuzzy end.
Right.
Cut it here so that there's enough room for the corn on the cob to pass, and then just squeeze it out, and it comes out clean without any of this stuff. That's my hint for the day. Just happen to have that there. Thank you, Richard.
That truly is, folks. That truly is a coincidence that he didn't know that. But we're getting some really great.
And now that everyone's got their value of Every Other Wednesday, let's wrap it up, shall we?
Yeah, okay.
That's it for today.
Hey, we have a month's notice now on Carol's birthday. So
okay, good. I have all this hairy stuff all over me now.
You've got, it's called silk. It's called silk. Corn silk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and happy late birthday, Jenny. So we're seeing with butter, no salt, delish. Carol says, "All shucks." That just has made my day. I just got to tell you, Old Bay and butter grilled in the husk with a little butter and black pepper. Thanks, Farmer Jeff.
Actually has a little tool to cut it off the cob and add butter and red pepper. Yeah, that's called my wife.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So Old Bay is winning the day here. So
yeah. What else is there, Richard?
Well, shall we? So what else it is today? I told you I was going to tell you what else it is today. It is National Making Life Beautiful Day, National German Chocolate Cake Day.
Wait, I got one of those too. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. Go ahead.
You are going to show us some pictures in a moment about a beautiful life.
Okay.
Today, for those of us, I know we have a contingent from Alaska. I don't know if we have anyone from Hawaii, but today is King Kamehameha Day. And it is also, this is the last one I'll share. Oh, I've already said, that's it. That's all I got for today.
Okay.
So just before we get started, we said that Jeff was out for a little bit.
Well,
Tell us where you were and why you were.
well, let me show you. First of all, I just want to introduce myself as I do
Oh,
this.
that's right. We need to do that. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I am Jeff Tobe, for those of you who've forgotten. And I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I was out marrying off my second and last daughter in Lake Tahoe. It was absolutely beautiful. Can you see that picture?
Yep.
Yes,
I
good.
have to change screens. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
I do have two daughters. The one that's getting married is on the right, on my left. So just so you know, I know it's 2025, but I just wanted to clear that up. And of course, we are expecting our grandson in August. My oldest daughter actually officiated the wedding. And then finally, there's my bride of 43 years as well. It was a beautiful wedding. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you
Sanjay,
for
who are
sharing.
you?
My name is Sanjay, and my kids did not get married, but I do have one
I'm
off
glad
to
to know
college.
that.
I have one off to college in September, so that's kind of funky.
Wow.
I know. I keep questioning when did he get older than me, but my name is Sanjay. I'm a speaker and author based in Oakville, Ontario, just outside of Toronto, and I focus on leadership and performance. Mr. Richard Haddon, I will turn it to you, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm Richard Haddon, and I'm a speaker and author. I talk about employee engagement in the new world of work. And I live in Jacksonville, Florida. That's where I am today, where, as Sanjay pointed out a little while ago, it is stupid hot, and it really is. But that's it. 'Tis the season. So there we are. So it is also the season for us to talk about what we wanted to focus on today is something that I have known about for a long time, but I've started to see a resurgence in interest of it, not only from me, but from others as well. And that's something called the psychological contract at work. So Jeff, Sanjay, what's your orientation to that? I know that's not the first time you've heard that term, that phrase. How would you guys describe the psychological contract at work? And then I'll tell you if you're right or wrong.
Oh, perfect. Well, the psychological contract is a contract that the unwritten contract that an employer and an employee have in terms of engagement is what are we trading here? Are we trading time for money? Are we going to create an environment that looks like this or like that? And more often than not, I say it's an unwritten, but it could actually be expressed. It's usually not. It's just kind of an understood thing.
Yeah.
But I guess the more savvy employers might actually be more articulate with it. If it's not necessarily branded on the wall, it might be, coffee or water cooler discussions where people are saying like, here is the expectation. And as we're going to get into it more, but it's definitely evolved over time. Because if you look at, our parents' generation, it was a matter of you worked for one organization and 35 years later you got a watch. And whether you loved them or hated them, it didn't matter. You were loyal and you showed up. And now loyalty shows its ways in different forms moving forward.
And I just take that a step further. I've heard it especially expressed in the last few years as it relates to working remotely and the misunderstanding.
It's really kind of I think maybe that's why it's started to have a little bit of a resurgence because of that issue. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, and the misunderstanding of that nonverbal, sometimes assumed contract that you have with your employer. And the best example is, a company is calling, as many are, or organizations are calling their people back to work. And the employees are going, no, I'm doing more work here. I'm more productive, and I don't want to sit in the freeway for half an hour every day. So that's the contract that they feel is being broken.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you guys are exactly right. It is an unwritten, Carol says half an hour.
But she lives in LA. That's
yeah. It is. I think by definition, it is an unwritten, unwritten contract, but it can be spoken about. And I agree with you, Sanjay, that kind of more savvy organizations do talk about it. They acknowledge it, and there's nothing wrong with calling it a psychological contract. I think the minute you put pen to paper on it, it ceases being a psychological contract and moves into something else. But that may be splitting hairs.
Yeah. By the way,
Yeah.
Carol, not only talking traffic, but riots as well. You have to account for that.
Oh, stop it.
Okay. Sorry.
Stop it.
I did want to say this though, in terms of psychological contract. So, as you mentioned, Richard, it's something that's been around forever. It's taken its resurgence again, based on probably what Jeff's saying, just in terms of getting people back to work. But if we take it out of the workplace, this has existed forever in every discipline. Again, we may not use that language, but the thing that I'm thinking of specifically is I've played ultimate frisbee for many, many years, and I've played on super uber competitive teams and sloth like teams. And what I found is both groups can have fun, and both groups can have success, whatever success is, whether it's winning or exercise or socializing. But here's the big key: people have to be on the same page. And so when I've played with people who are super competitive and they play on a laid back team, you get friction.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if I played with people who are not very good, or they're just beginners and they play on a competitive team, again, you get friction, you get people getting upset. It's really quite simple. It's because the expectations are not aligned, for whether it's the employee employer or the player and the team philosophy.
Well, that could be said as well about organizations' cultures, right? I mean, certain cultures are certain ways, and certain people are not going to fit with those cultures. There's nothing wrong with the culture or the person that doesn't fit. It's just not a good fit.
That happens to be what our program is about, Richard.
Well, that's kind of why I thought. So I thought maybe we would bring this up. But it also, I think it's important that, I think it has come to light because there's been a lot of friction regarding the return to office and work from home kind of thing. But I don't want us to talk about the pros and cons of working from home. I think we've done that, and we could do that, but that's not what this is about. I think it's a bigger issue, like you said, Jeff. It's what are our expectations? So I've seen the psychological contract described as, like Sanjay said, it's an unwritten, it's an assumed, it's an implicit agreement that's there. But it's what are we agreeing? We're agreeing, here's what I owe you, and here's what you owe me. So it's about what each party, the employer and the employee, owes each other. And so some of this, we've been looking at an article that came out in the Harvard Business Review later, because we're very highbrow, and we do like to read things from the Harvard Business Review and other such august publications. And one of the things that they talk about there is how that has changed. That what I think I owe you and what you think you owe me has changed, but the importance of that agreement probably has not changed. It is still super important.
One of the things that bugged me about this topic, I have to tell you, right from the beginning, as I researched it and read the articles you were sending, Richard, is that it seems to me that if you have a great culture, this should be known.
Exactly.
Major things should not cause conflict because they've been discussed, or it's part of your policy, or it's part of
it's open.
Leadership has had with the front line. And so, psychological contract. Well, there are still things we're going to miss. I get that. But
when we miss them, we can talk about them. Right.
As long as the culture allows for that open conversation.
So let me ask you this, gentlemen. What's the evolution look like? What did it look like 30 years ago? What did it look like 20 years ago? What's it look like today? And what's it going to look like moving forward?
Well, so I'm glad you asked that, Sanjay. There's some, people who have really studied this, people who have spent an awful lot more time on it than we have. And we've spent some time on it. Talk about, long time ago, the paternalistic era. And I think that's what you were describing a little bit, Sanjay. The psychological contract, it was very paternalistic. Most employers, say, we'll provide job security and benefits in exchange for employee loyalty and hard work. And I would say probably my parents, I don't know if everybody out in the group's parents, but my parents probably fit into that. As we got more into the 20th century, which is kind of when I started working, and when we started working, it moved to what scholars call a transactional era, where it was much more transactional, shorter term goals, individual career progression was important, and a focus on employability. So it was, okay, you got to come to work and you got to work hard and we'll pay you, but don't expect to necessarily to retire here, and that gives the organization a lot more freedom. That's when companies started thinking about downsizing, as Stephen is talking about, and everything. So those were the first two, and now they're saying there's this kind of this more modern era. In the more modern era, according to the description, that I'm going to read, says employees seek work that aligns with their values and social conscience, leading to a renewed focus on purpose and meaning in the workplace. Now, I can see I'm looking out there at our audience, and I can see some eyes rolling, and I can probably see some also going, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, in some ways, some people would say, "Oh, that sounds a little woo-woo." We're here to make money. We got to work and all this, and yet, I think we're seeing things moving in that direction.
Absolutely. My new son-in-law.
Yeah.
Just you guys are familiar with his struggle with finding a job, and finally found one in December. Just on Friday of last week, they rescinded unlimited time off.
Oh.
So there's a whole other angle that going back on your psychological content, or literally going back on your policies. We had planned a family trip coming up this fall, and he just can't take the time now because he only gets 2 weeks off. So it's interesting, and I do want to go to what Stephen was talking about. Right now we're in an era, especially government in the States, of downsizing, right sizing. I want to know what you guys think. If it's impacted the balance. I don't think it has, because I think that a lot of employers are doing it not by choice, because of either lack of profit or budgets being cut depending on what sector they're in. And so I don't think that contract has changed. What do you guys say?
I don't know. I think what happens is every point of contact, every relationship exchange either brings you closer together or further apart. And it doesn't matter if it's your fault or it's the government's fault or they cut your funding. People tend to, especially if you got burned, you want to point the finger. And it's easy to point the finger at the organization. And I think this is what happens. Let's go back to your son-in-law. They rescinded the offer, and who knows why. And it could be because some government regulation, and it could be someone lost a bet. It doesn't matter. But the point is, he feels slighted. So guess what? He now feels justified in stealing some staplers.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it just escalates.
Not that he will, but yeah.
But so he steals
my son-in-law.
Yeah. There you go. He steals staplers, and other people around him who are maybe newer to the organization go, "Oh, we steal staplers around here? Great." And you have this cascading rippling effect that all starts from one person feeling burned, and then someone. Oh, I know Rich is going to get mad at me, but let's look at the escalation of Lonnie and Donnie, right? Trump and Musk. One says one thing, one does it, and then you do this. You just keep escalating.
So wait, I do want to just clarify that they did it across the company, not just to myself.
Right, not just to your son-in-law.
Right.
No,
your son-in-law would never steal staplers.
Right, no, exactly.
No, but Sanjay, you've hit on a really important point, and that is, again, the people who study and write about this talk about a breach of a psychological contract and talk about what happens when either side, either the employer or the employee, breaches that psychological contract. It has consequences. So in this case, Jeff's son-in-law's employer breached part of that contract. Again, it may have been written, it may not have, but it was definitely something that he and everybody else held as part of the deal, part of the understanding. They breached it, and they know that now is positively associated with intent to quit. And not that your son-in-law is going to quit, but it's positively associated in general in the research with intent to quit, and it's negatively associated with professional dedication and with employees' performance, not only in their core duties, but especially in their willingness to go above and beyond expectations.
Yeah.
And so most people, when there's a promise like that that's been breached or broken, it can't help but kind of takes them a step or two back from that warm, fuzzy feeling that they might have had about the company. It can't help but do that. And so I think many leaders fail to see how strong that connection is.
And to Sanjay's point, I know he said staplers tongue in cheek. That's an extreme. But in this case, the first thing my son-in-law said was, you know, I only was going to take 2 weeks a year anyway. And
Yeah.
now he's going, maybe I'll, you know, I'll
Now,
take
but it's
more,
the
or-
principle of the thing. Yeah, it's exactly.
right.
Well, you see, what happens, I think this is the way it works. When an employee breaches, actually go the other way. When the employer breaches, you get higher turnover. People start looking for another job. They're open. They may have been dedicated and loyal. This was their 3-year plan. Now it's their
Yeah.
plan until I find something better on Indeed.
Right.
When the employee breaches, you tend to get overregulated and more rules. And so we implement this new thing across the board. Now everyone's only can only, because now, to Jeff's point, people start taking 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks off, and they're like, we're limiting it to 3. And by over regulating and adding more rules, you actually make it a less attractive place to work, and you actually increase your own turnover. So in both cases, you increase turnover. And what happens is, we all know that there's a huge cost to turnover. To getting people competent and training them and getting them to a proficient level is a very costly thing. And if we can keep dedicated people who not have to be there, but get to be there and get to go to work, it fundamentally lowers costs and increases organizational culture.
So let me throw another cog in the wheel, and that is, I didn't say this on purpose, but I wanted to get your reaction to my son-in-law. But they said it was because, so now they're going to justify it.
Mm-hmm.
Because 18% of employees are taking more than 4 weeks off in the year, and we just can't afford that. So now it's back on the employees. Now he
Yeah,
said,
and
now
it's
my
not
son-in-law
even
says,
on your son-in-law; it's on those other jerks he works with.
and he
who
said
are
that. He
taking
said,
advantage. Yeah,
I know exactly who does that. He said, you know,
yeah.
Hey, you know what? He knows exactly who does that. Guess what? So do the employers.
Yeah.
I'm sick of
And they,
organizations that punish the good.
just
If you
blanket.
have an issue with a handful of employees, deal with the handful of employees.
Handful of employees,
Punish
yeah.
everyone else.
let HR deal with
Okay,
it.
yeah.
I agree.
So we have an unusually rich chat box today.
Yes.
A couple things.
Can I comment
go
on
ahead.
Dan's comment?
Yeah,
You know, he's talking
go
about
ahead.
Simon Sinek, but I love what he said at the end. You know, it's placing, it's the theory of placing shareholder value above stakeholder value.
Yeah,
And that happens so often. We see it all the time, right? With groups that we work with. That, it's all about the board of directors. It's all about the shareholders, and we forget about the employees. So thank you.
And you know, and I'm gonna take a little bit of a devil's advocate position on that and say it is certainly their prerogative to make that the focus if that's what they want to do.
But make it clear. Make it clear.
But make it clear, and then be prepared for the consequences. And those consequences are almost always going to be a less engaged workforce. And then that ends up, it just becomes, you know, a self-defeating kind of a thing.
It can, but if you're transparent, you will actually attract the people who feed that, right?
Yeah. And to be clear, Jenny, I don't think those words are woo-woo, but I think some people might characterize them that way. But you're absolutely right. We got to get the work done. I think what a lot of this research about the psychological contract is proving is it's not the evolution of the psychological contract is not just at an organizational level. It is at a societal level. And so the expectations from employees are different. The expectations from employers are different. I think most people understood, even as long ago as 20 years ago, that coming into the workplace did not mean a job for life kind of thing. And organizations have proven that by their willingness to binge and purge on the workplace kind of as they wanted to. But look, you know, Fritz brings up a really, I think, fascinating point, and I'm a little unhappy with myself that I hadn't already thought of this. And, you know, he says, working in the government, we accepted an exchange of personal enrichment compared to private sector for job security and meaningful work. Well, the recent purge it hasn't changed the meaningful work part, but it has changed the job security part. And so now people are saying, look, we came into it under one understanding. Now the deal has changed. Where's my 20 years of pay that I was willing to not take? And that's just that's
you guys know
going to have a negative. Yeah, that's definitely going to have a negative impact.
You know, you guys know that until this week, my wife worked for the federal government. So,
yes, but now you can say anything you want, right?
Yes, exactly. Now we can say it.
Yeah, but you should say that she left on her own volition.
She did leave on her own volition with a nice offer a buyout, if you will, and you know, and she'd been there for 20 something years, and she was going to retire anyway. So it
Yeah.
worked out perfectly, but it was not because of her poor performance.
Yeah. And there's another comment. So Ashley says, in my state, we've recently started implementing a return to office after we were on. There are a few exceptions, one being the team member was hired as remote. Everyone is all up in arms about coming back, which is wild to me, but I fear it's going to cause a lot of turnover. I think you probably are right. It probably will. And here's the thing. I don't think we're not here to moralize or to evaluate whether that's right or wrong. I think we're just here to say this is kind of what it is. And so I know so a lot of things are changing, right? And they kind of always have. So the psychological contract is changing, and it is changing. Now, we could sit and wring our hands and complain and fret about the fact that the things are not like they were back when our parents first started working. We could do that. And I would actually kind of like for them to be that way, but I think it's not very productive to to complain about it. We just have to accept this is what it is. So how, as an organization, how do we respond in an effective way? If this is what the expectations are we going to change everybody's expectations, or are we going to change ourselves so that we can perhaps meet those expectations and continue to perform?
I also think it becomes somewhat self-fulfilling. It's a chicken and egg kind of
Yeah.
issue, especially because really, I think the core of this thing, it has a lot to do with loyalty, right? Before, again, I don't think loyalty has changed. I think way it manifests itself has. So before, loyalty meant you stayed with the same organization for 30 years, and then you were done. I was actually talking about with my partner about this program before we got on, and she was saying, you know, when her dad would go into the bank, he knew all the tellers' names. He had his own personal banking assistant or bank manager, whatever. It was all relationship based. But now you go into the bank every 6 weeks, there's turnover.
Yeah.
Right? So you cannot create.
It's a machine-based operation. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so is that because everyone kept leaving, so they created the structure, or did they create the structure and people kept leaving? I don't really know, but I know it is fundamentally different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to bring up two things. One, just between you and me, Richard, he went from girlfriend to partner now. So
I know.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
He's now got a partner.
Just a little inside EOW stuff here, folks.
We'll talk afterwards. But
yeah,
way back when in these messages, Ashley brought up something that I wanted to ask you guys a question, and it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that the question, I won't reread it, but the question is that is this an individual contract, or do you think it's a contract that blankets all employees? Because I think that's changed. When our parents were working, it was a blanket contract. You can call it a policy, you can call it anything you want, but this is the way it was. You said that, Richard. I think it's evolved to now it's individual. Ashley was talking about someone who was hired, you know, during COVID, and they were hired to work remotely, and now they're being asked that back. That's an individual contract because people who worked prior to COVID don't have the same contract, you know, or unspoken contract. And so I think we just have to change our thinking too about this the psychological contract.
Well, no, you're right. And so it's interesting, again, some of the things that I was reading. You know, it's funny when you read something that gives a name to something that you've always known existed. So what they're saying is that in previous psychological contracts, that the formal workplace policies were based on something called the ethics of justice. The ethics of justice, and that is a rational, one-size-fits-all way of thinking about fairness. That's certainly how it has been communicated that it works in government and other very bureaucratic organizations. That it's kind of one size fits all. The things apply to everybody. And now they're saying that the expectation is more to move toward an approach based on what they call the ethics of care. So we're contrasting in the past ethics of justice, now ethics of care. And the ethics of care recognizes that fair does not mean the same for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. It can overlap.
They can, but it doesn't necessarily.
The justice and the care piece, I mean, it's a Venn diagram, and there is a good chunk of overlap. But again, showing how you care. If someone loves surprise party and someone hates surprise parties, you don't reward them the same way.
Yeah. And
but
Dan makes a really
we
good point. HR likes to keep the ethics of justice in place because it's easier. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can relate to that.
It's way
It's
easier.
easier
It's
to
black and
administer
white.
that, but
It's
it
black
may
and white.
not be the very best. What were you going to say, Jeff?
No, I just to say we have some great programs that we've done here, some great episodes with a good friend of the show, Brian Lee, on
Yeah,
culture of care. So,
yeah,
and
yeah,
especially in healthcare, but I
yeah,
think it applies across the board.
yeah.
I mean, education is another example of this. It used to be the one size fits all. It was education. It's here's what it is. Sit in your desk and do it. And if you don't learn this way, we give you a dunce cap and we're going to order and the top person, Mark, sits here and we're going to do it this way. Then all of a sudden they said, wait a minute, there's different learning styles and different people can thrive under different conditions. And so there are a core group that can work under these conditions and some work better here and some work better here. And that's really what it, eventually what we want to get to is a unique individual psychological contract that is mass producible, right? It's like the broad niche. There's certain
Yeah.
elements. Everyone wants to feel safe and connected and contribute and belong and have security and show loyalty. Yes, but how we do that changes from person to person, organization to organization, and time frame to time frame, right? How an organization was operating prior to COVID versus during COVID versus post COVID, same organization, potentially the same people, but they have to play the game differently given the
And respond to the situation.
Yep.
And
Do you think it's evolving though, or I think it's more circular.
you think it's going back to something?
I think we're going back, and I think we're going back to a time when I don't know, it's harder to work for an employer for a long time. I don't know. I can't express my thoughts, but I don't think it's evolving. I think we're using the wrong word.
Well, it's definitely changing. It's definitely changing.
Okay.
But so, what Fritz says as an HR professional, we often look to the equitable solution that may not seem fair to people who deeply believe in justice. And I think that he's saying the kind of one size fits all. No case is exactly the same and shouldn't have the same outcome. But that does fly in the face of the ethics of justice. But what Fritz is describing is more aligned with the ethics of care. It reminds me of an example of a CEO that I had worked with, the company, and the company was small enough just so that they were just under some of the legal, they weren't covered by some of the legal requirements just because of the size of the employer. And this guy, there was a salesperson in the organization, a salesman in the organization who really was a good performer, but at some point his performance began to noticeably flag, and the guy just went to him, and the sales manager went to him and said, what's going on? Come to find out, he was having an issue at home. One of his children was having real problems in school, and it was just causing a great deal of turmoil in the family. And so they were trying to figure out how to get a tutor because they thought a tutor might help. The CEO found out about it and said, wait a minute, I can hire you a tutor. Let me hire you a tutor. We'll get a tutor to help your kid, and let's see what happens. And they did. And the kids started doing better, and the father started doing better, and and everybody lived happily ever after. Except one person came to this to the CEO and said, "Wait a minute, you didn't pay for my kid to have tutoring." And the CEO said, "You don't have any kids. Shut up." and it just brought up the thing. I told him he probably could have expressed that better, but it was true that. And he said, "What I meant was, you don't have any kids, so that's not a need of yours. But I tell you what, if you have a need, I hope you trust that I'm going to help you take care of it if I can, because we need all of us to do well here." And that, I think, describes this ethics of care, which is a very pragmatic, very practical approach to this.
So, okay, can I hijack the conversation slightly, change gears?
It wouldn't be the first time.
All right. Jeff's saying no, so I know I'm on the right track. So this is a question I asked you guys, and I think it actually ties into this topic. So I had a breakfast with a friend of mine yesterday, and he's working for relatively new in this organization. He's been there about a year, and he's done some amazing things for them. He's saved them a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
In fact, he came with this proposal and went to his boss, and his boss yelled at him and said, "This is ridiculous. You can't do this. We can't, blah, blah, blah." And the reason is it was threatening to the boss, because if this could be implemented, it shows that his boss had been inefficient for years. Anyways, So it was some cost thing. They were paying 40 cents. He said, we can get it down to 17 cents. And they're doing 100,000 of these a day. So it's significant saving. The guy said, you can't do it. So anyways, they went and they implemented it and they got it down, not down to 17 cents, but down to 16 cents. And now all of a sudden the boss is taking credit for it. He's going to the VPs and talking about this great thing that he's done. And again, from a psychological contract, his has been shattered. He's enjoying working here, but now he's considering like, do I want to get out of here? So my question for you guys and the audience is, what should he do? Because I actually was kind of stumped. Like, you don't really want to go behind the boss, but you know, there's a big food chain here.
I replied to you exactly what I thought, and
Yeah.
I want to share it for a reason. My reasoning, and I said that he needs to go over his head. It's already the guy, dug his own grave, so to speak. But I said there's got to be what I call a paper trail, an electronic email trail that shows that this was his idea. So he's got to get his ducks in a row and to be able to take it to the higher ups and say, look, I really debated about this, but I just want you to know that it wasn't Bob's idea. It was actually my idea. This is, I don't know if anybody's read the book, The Other Einstein. And it's a very interesting book.
About me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's about Albert Einstein's wife, who was absolutely as brilliant as, if not more than he was.
Marilyn Monroe?
Yeah, exactly. And stole some of his ideas. Or he stole some of her ideas. And then they ended up in court and whatever. It just reminds you of a book. But the point is that too many people lay low in this situation because they're afraid, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's really a breach of trust and that's a breach of character.
How do you work with somebody after that,
Yeah, exactly.
But I would say that, again, reneging or changing policies, especially if you were hired on or brought on to do something, it's very similar. Like, I mean, it's a disintegration of the psychological contract.
Yeah. But again, if we go back to think about the psychological contract in a larger sense, societal and, over the sweep of time, I think what we can learn from is that the psychological contract does exist and it does impact people's behavior, their willingness. What are you doing?
I'm taking a picture of what Shelley said, so
exactly, right?
Oh, okay.
I can hold it to Sanjay whenever I need to.
I never thought, Sanjay, listen to Jeff.
Yeah. Just for the record, I'm not very good at reading, so you can show that to me and I won't know what it is.
All right, so back to serious stuff here.
All right, come on.
It is a big kind of, again, it's going over the sweep of time. I think the psychological contract definitely exists between, whether we know it or not, we all have one with our employer. And if either of us breaches that, and we've been focusing a little bit more on the employer breaking the contract, but when the employee breaks the contract, then the employee or employer has every right to respond the way that they would as well. Yeah. And so I think that says a lot about the need to be open and transparent about it and just talk with your manager. Hey, this is the deal here. And what do we expect? What am I willing to give? I think employers do have to keep in mind that, and this is not the case in every industry, but overall in the United States, the employee is still in the driver's seat. And employers better not get too cocky about that, or they're going to really end up with some problems.
I don't know if I believe that, Richard, when it comes to the government sector.
I said not in every sector and not in every industry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, Stephen asked, amazing. Go ahead, finish your thought, Richard.
No, just for the economy as a whole, and in certain industries, very much so. I mean, unemployment is still 4.2%.
Yeah.
All
right, Stephen takes us on a whole new tangent.
Yeah.
For a few minutes, and that is this a reflection of society at large? People not getting married, living together, divorces are up, more people are living alone. Is it a focus on self rather than company or others at the company?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah.
Sure. There's a lot to be said, though, that this idea of marriage is a false construct, and that people do want to kind of come and go. And again, I think we always have this spillover effect. So this notion, and it's very astute of Stephen yet pointing it out, I think it exists everywhere. We used to be, committed, loyal, to the point, I would say, of stubbornness and in some cases stupidity. Like
and at our own peril. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
And I think we see the same thing with membership in societies and associations and organizations and churches and everything in general. And one of the points I was trying to make earlier was, yeah, that's probably the way it is. We may not like it, but we're probably not going to change it.
Well, I wonder
I
if
think
it's
the problem is the cost to change it is so significant.
Yeah, yeah,
So to do
but
it abruptly, you get
yeah,
you get what's happening in the States.
yeah,
If you make too
yeah,
many changes at once, you get
yeah.
shock to the system.
Right. Yeah,
I think,
yeah,
but things evolve and not necessarily evolve for the better or worse. They just evolve. I guess
yeah.
the right word is change. As things change
But
over time,
yeah.
because the values and the needs and the timing changes and the external circumstances change, that what it looks like today is not how it's going to look like 5 years from now.
So
yeah.
think about this. People 50, 60, 70 years ago, layoffs were almost not, they were almost unheard of unless there was some, major economic issue. And you didn't just willy-nilly, get rid of people and bring them in and that kind of thing. Well, that changed at some point, and then people grew up in households where their parents were laid off and where there wasn't that loyalty, and they learned that putting too much loyalty in one employer was self-detrimental. So then people started pulling away from that. And I think very much what Stephen is saying, I think that has been societal in a lot of different ways. And people are saying, I don't have to, and I'm not going to. Whether that's good or not, I don't know. And we all make different choices. But
Yeah.
I think overall, there is clearly a joining, a decommitment, a de-loyalist kind of a
Decoupling.
movement.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hope I can tie this in because I thought it was very interesting. Very, focused on Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, guys. So bear with me for a second. But on the news this morning, they announced that the two largest Jewish congregations in town, who actually separated in the 1990s because of that changes.
Doctrinal issues.
Yeah, are talking about remerging. And the rabbi said something that was very interesting to me. And obviously people are very upset about it, especially people who lived through the split between the two. And it wasn't a pleasant thing, apparently. But he said, you know what? People have to stop being selfish and be more selfless. And I thought that was an interesting statement because talk about, it really does apply to where I think we're going in society, business, everything. That we become very selfish, not in a bad way, right? But we're protecting ourselves.
Yeah,
But
self-protecting, I think is.
I think you're right, Jeff. I think it's cyclical. Everything that's old is new again. I mean, for the longest time, you had separate municipalities popping up, and then get into amalgamation, and then you get too big, and we're going to break them up again, and then we're going to do amalgamation again. And we see this in different forms. I use the education sector because I've done a lot of work with them. So they had mainstream, and then they decoupled everything, and then they de-streamed again, and then they, I actually in Calgary, the housing, the way they do it, whereas a lot of other cities they do, here's your townhouses, and here's your fancy houses, and here's your bungalows. Well, they want a 12-plex next to a bungalow next to a big ass house.
No zoning.
The zone they zone it differently, right?
Yeah.
So I think again it is very cyclical because we try it for a while and go.
We try things, and when they don't work, when they work, fine. When they don't, I mean, gosh, we could talk about a lot of different things that are like that. But
Carol's comment,
actually.
Carol's comment, which is very funny, but is it really think about it though? It's very true. Exactly. They're not going to ask the rabbi who's losing his job. They definitely have the rabbi who keeps his job as their spokesperson. Yeah. And finally, Shelley says selfish in the base is the base of survival. You serve yourself, you strengthen your survival, but it's when you serve others as well as yourself that strengthens growth. How could we finish on a stronger note?
On a better note than that, you're right. Well, we think about if everybody were a solopreneur, that would be one thing, but most of us work in a community. We work in an organization, and we know that some of the best organizations are those who have built not only a workplace, but they have built a community.
Yeah.
And that requires having a fairly stable, whatever that psychological contract is, it's got to be well understood, well articulated, and pretty well adhered to, unless there's an agreement from everybody to change it.
I have to finish with a really funny story based on what Jenny just said. Put your oxygen mask on first. Many years
Yeah,
I was sitting
yeah.
in first class on Delta, and they do that, in the announcement,
Yeah.
make sure you put your, and he turned to me and said, how much money do, a guy beside me, how much money do you have? I go, what do you mean? He says, are you rich? I go, no. He said, oh, because if you're rich, I'd put yours on first and you'd owe me. So,
Oh, well,
all right.
this was fun, folks, and thank you, chat bunch, for pitching in. This was great. What's the date of our next little get together?
Well, usually
April
I know
25th.
that.
Say that again.
April 25th.
No.
April.
How about June 25th?
How about June?
How about
25th?
July? June
How about
25th.
June. Let's
June.
just be very clear. We've had a lot of dates thrown around
I
in the
told
last
you
12
this
seconds.
before. I'm good with
June
numbers, not
25th,
with words.
we'll be back. We do need Mike. Yes, we desperately need Mike. And we'll have another fascinating topic. Stay tuned throughout the summer. We've got several guest hosts lined up, and I know you're going to enjoy that. So Stephen says the April 25th meeting was great.
Where do we meet?
Where? Here. When?
When?
Not
Every
even
other
when.
Wednesday.
I meant
Bye,
when.
folks. See you. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.